is a stamp duty cut on homes worth less than £250,000. Where on earth did they get that one from? That has been Tory policy for 3 years. He came in as Chancellor, copying our inheritance tax cut. He leaves as Chancellor, copying our stamp duty cut. The only new ideas in British politics are coming on this side of the House. And the only thing that Labour are bringing are debt, waste and taxes. And here is a first. The centrepiece of this budget, the stamp duty cut, has already been torpedoed by a Treasury Minister. This is what the Economic Secretary said about this policy. Raising stamp duty threshold to £250,000 would not be an effective use of public money. First they denounce it, then they embrace this, and that's not all. We just heard, remember our tax plans for super-strength cider? The Chancellor's spokesman, when we announced it, said that that was illegal. It's now official government policy. Remember our proposal for 10,000 extra university places? The Higher Education Minister, the Honourable Member for Tottenham, I don't know whether he's in his place today or is he he's over there, right? This is what he said. It is clear, as has been demonstrated in the House today, that this fatuous proposal of extra places is elitist. That's what they said about it. Once again, they've been caught taking the public for fools. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Chancellor spoke for an hour. He could have done it all in a sentence. Labour have made a complete mess of the British economy, and they're doing nothing to clean it up. And I have to say, one figure in the Red Book stands out above all others. They have doubled the national debt, and on these figures, they are going to double the national debt again. In this election, in this year, an election year, they are borrowing £167 billion. Now, we are meant to be impressed that it's turned out a few billion lower than the last disastrous forecast, but it is still, and honourable members should be ashamed of this, more than every single Labour government in history has ever borrowed added up together. That's what they've done. Like every Labour government before them, they've run out of money and they are leaving it to the next Conservative government to clean up the mess. Today, this Chancellor had his last chance to do the right thing for the country. He totally failed. They're going, the taxes for hire are on their way out of the chamber. They're just going to carry on spending, carry on borrowing and carry on failing. And I have to say the biggest risk to our recovery is 5 more years of this Prime Minister. 5 more years of falling confidence, 5 more years of bloat and debt and taxes, 5 more years of Britain closed for business. Most of the Cabinet, looking at their Blackberries, they can't think of a single reason why the country should have another 5 years of this Prime Minister. So I say let's have an election and put them out of their misery. Now, let's have a look in detail at the appalling mess that the Prime Minister and Voldemort seem to find so funny. Here are some of the things they didn't tell us in the budget. They boasted about trade. Get him an espresso or there'll be trouble. They boasted about trade. They didn't tell us that on page 171 of the Red Book, just published, it says the trade deficit has actually risen by £7 billion. They told us about investment. They didn't tell us that page 169 of the Red Book, it says business investment is actually falling by 5% this year. Mr. Deputy Speaker, almost everything they've told us about the economy has turned out not to be true. They told us they would be prudent. They told us they'd be prudent. This Chancellor has just said that they will be borrowing £734 billion over the next 6 years, giving us a national debt of £1.3 trillion. They have confirmed in the Red Book that the deficit this year, at 11.8% of GDP, is the worst in the OECD except for Ireland. That's what this Labour government has left us with. They talked about education and the importance of education. Next year, they are going to be spending more on debt interest than they are going to be on educating our children. They told us endlessly they had abolished boom and bust, but the figures show they have given us the deepest recession since the war. The figures show we lost 6.2% of our GDP in total. The Chancellor endlessly boasted about the action they'd taken, the longest and deepest recession since the war. Yes, I'll say it again because you should be ashamed of it. Also, endlessly talking about their brilliant judgments, yet we were the first into recession and the last out of recession. Endlessly talking about the great judgments, about how well prepared we were. We went in with the biggest budget deficit and we come out with the largest budget deficit. And of course, they promised us real help now. Yet more businesses went bust in this recession than any other, and more people have gone bankrupt under Labour than ever before in our history. And what about all those schemes, so many of the schemes he mentioned, that were launched with great fanfare? How many people did they help? Well, let's take the mortgage support scheme. That was announced in December 2008. They said this was real help for homeowners. So how many homeowners did it help? 15. 15. That cost £66,000 per household helped. Or to put it in a currency the Cabinet can understand, that's about 13 days of Jeff Hoon's consultancy fees. And they told us endlessly about how brilliantly they're done on unemployment. What a triumph it was on unemployment. 1 in 4 adults of working age in our country are not in work. They talked about the European comparisons. We've got more young people unemployed than anywhere else in Europe. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to be fair to this Prime Minister, there is one forecast he got absolutely spot on. It's when he told that audience of bankers, what you, as the City of London, have done for financial services, we as a government intend to do for the economy as a whole. That is a pledge he met in full. And, Mr. Deputy Speaker, 13 years on from 1997, we can now see what's happened. In 1997, debt was £350 billion. Now it's getting on for £860 billion. In 1997, the deficit was £6 billion. That's what you inherited, a £6 billion deficit. Today, it's £167 billion. In 1997, we were ranked 7th in the world for competitiveness. Now we're 13th. We were 4th in the world for tax and regulation. You want to know what we're going to do? We're going to get back to 4th in the world for tax and regulation. Because I'm glad to see the Honourable Member for Brent North, he slept through the Chancellor's statement and he's woken up for my reply. Do you know where we are today?
Labour MP Barry Gardiner is trying to interrupt David Cameron.
4th in the world for tax and regulation. We are now 18th.